So I was in the hospital for pancreatitis about a week and a half. And at this point, I believe they came back and said that I didn't appear to have anything infectious, and I was referred to rheumatology. But then again, at this time, I'm in the hospital by myself, taking my own notes on morphine. So it's kind of jumbled. It's a blur. After leaving the hospital, I met my rheumatologist, and she reviewed the initial results from the lymph node biopsy, which came back negative for anything infectious, negative for lymphoma, and negative for sarcoidosis. But they were saying that maybe it was an atypical case of sarcoidosis. They couldn't rule that out, but it didn't look like how sarcoidosis looks. So my rheumatologist told me at that time that she was down to 2 diagnoses and believed it was either IgG4 related disease or Still's disease. And a big clue was the afternoon and evening only fevers. I believe those have a clinical name, but I can't remember it. I think it's something with a Q. But that was a clue. And also the pancreatitis was a clue. So at that point, she sent my lymph node to another place to be analyzed and requested that it be stained for IgG4. And that took a while. The staining came back and the sample was inconclusive. So there was not enough IgG4 in that sample on the staining to make a diagnosis. But I know now that's because I had been off and on prednisone so much leading up to this biopsy that it was probably masking the IgG4. So then I was diagnosed initially with Still's disease, and the treatment for that is prednisone. So now I have a diagnosis, I start prednisone, and I start feeling great, almost better immediately.
What is Still's disease for our patients who don't know?
Sure. So
Or our
Still's
viewers?
disease, it's an autoinflammatory disorder, and it involves daily fevers, usually afternoon and evening fevers that spike very high. It involves joint pain, and it involves a rash.
And I can see how that and IgG4 as that mimic thing that goes
Right.
on. Yeah,
And
okay.
it's also very rare, and it tends to show up more in children than adults, but there is an adult onset version. So they were thinking that was what I had. And it's treated with prednisone. So I took the prednisone, I got better.
Any type of inflammatory disease, right? So inflammation, steroids, like the first what do we call it? First line of attack.
Which it's a
Yeah.
miracle drug. Some doctor at some point in my journey was saying prednisone can make the dead walk, and it really can. Because when you feel like you're dead and you take prednisone, you're fine or
Yeah.
better.
No, it's so true because that joint inflammation that makes you super stiff and that pain, you start crouching and the movement is actually hard. So yeah, I can totally see that. And when you're dead, you're stiff, right?
Yeah.
You can walk. That's so true. I like that. The double-edged sword, the steroids.
It is. So after I started the steroids, I felt better, not 100% better, but I was eating again. I could walk. The joint pain was starting to go away. The skin manifestations were starting to go away. The fevers I was still having, but they were becoming less frequent and less high and less scary. So prednisone was amazing. I started to feel like I'm getting better. I have a diagnosis. Life is good. I can live with this. But then I was on really high dose prednisone, which would have been, I'm not sure if it was 40 or 60 milligrams at that time, but still a very high dose. And I had been on it for, I'm not sure how long, a long time. I was on that high dose for a long time. So at some point, fast forward to 2021, they added azathioprine to try to help me wean off of the prednisone. And that's a med that's also used in IgG4-RD a lot in early treatment. So this helped me taper off the prednisone and get down to 15 or 20 milligrams, but I would flare badly whenever the prednisone dose was reduced. And not like how I did once I finally started rituximab, where it would last for a week or so. Everything would just come back and it wouldn't go away. when I dropped a milligram, when I was on the
So
azathioprine.
azathioprine, or sorry, I might be saying it wrong. That is a DMARD medication that we often talk about. So DMARD is disease-modifying anti-rheumatic drug. So mycophenolate, MMF, hydroxychloroquine, plaquenil, methotrexate, and azathioprine. I think in England or in the UK they call it Imuron.
Yes.
These are all DMARD medications. Yeah.
So that was added, that did help me lower the prednisone, but because I still could not get off the prednisone, and now I've been on it maybe a year, maybe longer at this point. And there are effects of being on prednisone long term, as a lot of us know, not so great side effects. So my doctor wanted to completely get me off prednisone. That was the goal. So I finally got down to 15 milligrams of prednisone, and that was as low as I could get without losing all of the progress I made and going back to square one. And at that point, I was like, it took over a year to get here. I'm not sick anymore. If this is as good as it gets, I'll take it. I don't care about the side effects. It's fine. Let's just stay here.
Right. Very
But
important.
yeah,
Very
definitely.
important. It's, you know, stay at it when you're feeling good. You took so long to get there. You don't want to reverse the steps, you know, just, it's so true. So true.
Right. And especially having been at the worst, you don't want to go back to that. You remember how horrible that was. And once you feel good, that's a little taste of what it could be like. You don't want to go back to feeling bad, whatever it takes.
Right. And on that, actually, I'll say mental health. We don't ever want to go back, but then sometimes when a symptom randomly pops up and we've been feeling really good, I feel like mentally it does take me back a little bit. So it's true. It's like we got the taste of how good it could be, and we don't want to go back. So it does kind of like have an up and down in emotions for us when something comes back, I guess, you know.
Oh,
Sorry,
yeah,
I don't know why I
definitely.
pointed that out.
It could be like a trauma trigger when
Yeah,
one of those symptoms comes back and it reminds us this is where we came from and everything that we dealt with. And it could be like this again because we're healthy now, but who knows how long that'll last.
exactly. Yeah, trauma trigger. That's the word. Thank you.
Good observation. So azathioprine, I was taking that, and then to try to get off the prednisone completely, we added Cimzia injections, and Cimzia is a TNF inhibitor, which is tumor, I want to say necrosis factor inhibitor. So we added that. I started feeling really good. I was able to taper more off the prednisone. Life was good. I used to run before I got sick, and so now I was able to start running again and just feeling really good. So, I mean, not being able to walk to now I'm running and I'm training and I'm doing races, that was a big deal for me. That's how good I was feeling. And I was going down 5 milligrams at a time, still couldn't come off completely, but taking that prednisone out of my life, everything was good. So in 2021, at that time, I also was adjusting emotionally to having a rare disease and learning how to be sick, because 2020, I didn't really have to do that. Everything was shut down. We weren't really seeing each other that much. I was not interacting with society in that way. I was just like working and going to the doctor and sleeping and surviving. So in 2021, that was when I really started to realize there are some things I don't know about how to be sick and how to navigate this world. And part of being chronically ill in the US is even when you're dealing with all of these symptoms, if it's not contagious, you still have to show up to work or you lose your health insurance. Because that's how a lot of times it's tied to your job. So there is disability as an option, but it's usually a really long process and people get denied a bunch of times. So to me at that time, that didn't feel like an option. It felt like I have to just keep working, keep powering through. So that's happening in 2021. Vaccines came out at that point for COVID. And so family and social expectations were starting to pick up. People were going back to doing things in person. all these things that take extra energy, and spoons that I didn't have, and I didn't have a reference for spoons at the time, which now that makes so much sense to me. And
Yeah, it's like you wake up with 10. That's all
yes,
you got.
that's
Don't
it.
overdo it.
And if anybody is not familiar with spoons, that was discussed on another podcast earlier.
Yeah, we talk about it regularly about our spoons. Actually, it's just, you know, compartmentalizing your amount of energy throughout the day. So you say I have 10 parts of energy. How am I going to use it? Yeah. So you were learning about that then. Even for me, I had just recently learned it around COVID time. I didn't know about it, but it does have a really good impact once you learn about it, because you're like, okay, now I know what to do.
Right. It makes so much sense. And so I was kind of redefining, what does life look like if I have this responsibility, this, and these things that I want to do, but only 10 spoons or 5 spoons some days, or even 3. How do I do this, and what does that look like? So a big part of that was learning how to be in the world with a compromised immune system, because when COVID hit, I was not immunocompromised, but now I'm taking azathioprine, prednisone, Cimzia, all of the things that suppress the immune system. So that was interesting during a global pandemic, trying to navigate that. But I did it, and I figured it out with therapy. I definitely met with a therapist for that, to learn how to set boundaries about my health, and asking the people in my life to communicate, if there's even a tiny chance you're sick, I need you to let me know. Please warn me, don't
Very
come
huge.
around me.
Definitely very huge. It's like that, saying no to people and just being like, hey, if you've been around anyone sick, I won't come.
Yeah.
You guys can go if you want to, but if I'm gonna be there, I can't have you there. And learning to say that to the person was a hard step we had to learn for sure.
Exactly. And learning how to sometimes be in a mask in situations where I was the only one. Masking is not common, and even at the height of COVID was not common in my community. So having to wear that and realizing, when I wear this, I don't get sick. This is great. But that I'm the only one, and people will make comments when I'm out in public. What's wrong with you? Or desk mask doesn't stop viruses, all kinds of things. So kind of learning that was 2021. And I'm still running, feeling good, doing the work in therapy. How do I be immunocompromised? How do I live with limited spoons and energy in this illness? So in spring or summer of 2021, I was feeling good enough on the meds to run in a race, and I did this community fun run mini race. And this is where my story takes a turn. I mentioned before, there's before the tumor and after the tumor. So as I was running towards the finish line, my legs just gave out, and I wasn't tired. I had lots of energy, which we just said we don't always know how much energy we're going to have. I had 30, 40 spoons that day. I had all of it, and my legs just gave out. And I face planted right before I reached the finish line. So to add to that, we had to wear all white for this fun run. And so I'm like covered in blood in this white outfit. It was really gory, but I had fallen for no reason. And I was thinking maybe I tripped, but that didn't make sense. And what I really knew deep down was my legs just gave out. They just stopped working, and then they were working again. And it was the weirdest thing. So looking back now, I know that was because I had a spinal tumor pushing on my spinal cord, and that was causing my legs to not work. But I didn't know that at the time. I thought, well, I must have tripped. Something must have happened. So then in fall of 2021, I went to a wedding. I was dancing, same thing. My legs just gave out when I was dancing. And so I told myself, well, maybe you're still catching up after quarantine. You worked from home a lot. You can't drop it low anymore because you're getting older. But I knew deep down, no, my legs just gave out. That was what happened.
When you say they gave out, did you feel like it pulled you down? Like your knee bent and then you felt like it just gave out?
It felt like I just completely lost feeling in them. And then my whole
Oh,
body fell because I just could not feel my
couldn't
legs or my
feel.
feet at
Oh,
all,
wow. Okay. That's
which
scary. That was
it was
very scary, I'm
terrifying.
sure. Yeah. Wow, I'm so sorry you had to go through that.
But it only happened really those two times where it led to a fall. And I was rationalizing it still. I'm clumsy, I trip all the time.
Mm.
Maybe I'm out of shape. I can't dance like that anymore. I had all these reasons. And just deep down, I knew no, something's not right. That's something. So, for whatever reason, I still didn't think to mention this to my doctor that I was falling and that my legs gave out because it was, summer or spring and then again in the fall. And then it didn't happen again. So I was thinking, well, overall, I still feel really great. Nothing to worry about. Let's keep this going. So, also, around that time, maybe starting in fall, I had started to wake up every couple hours with neck pain. And that was my most concerning symptom at this time. It was severe and it was hospital level to the point where it would wake me up and I had to strategically place all my pillows so that I could sit up and fall asleep sitting up. It was that bad. And in February 2022, I mentioned this to my rheumatologist just in our regular, I'm coming in for my injection visit. And she said, well, it's probably nothing. We'll send you to PT. They can work on your neck with you. And we'll do an x-ray and an MRI just in case. And because she was already ordering imaging, she added chest, abdomen, pelvis, CT scans, just knock it all out, one dose of radiation. So the x-ray came back, it looked fine, showed nothing. And so we're thinking, okay, we'll proceed with PT. But then the MRI results came in. And I got a phone call saying that there will be no physical therapy and you need to see oncology as soon as possible because you have a fairly large tumor on your cervical spine. And it looks like there might be some unsuspected metastatic disease. And so at this point, they're thinking I have late stage cancer because not only do I have this huge spinal tumor, and I'm doing tumor in quotes because later we found out it wasn't that, but also
Mhm.
disease activity in other organs. My lungs and my kidneys also were showing similar things. So at that point, I go to oncology. They're running all the tests for various cancers. I'm seeing him weekly. Things are starting to move really quickly. They haven't moved this quickly at all in my journey until I get to oncology. And then he ordered more scans, more tests, and then scheduled surgery immediately. So they kind of had the impression, and I don't know if I was given this impression or if I just had it, but I didn't think I had very long to live at this point, based on how things were going medically and the things that I was hearing and witnessing in my appointments. At one point, I needed to have an MRI to see exactly what angle the tumor was at or how to cut. And they couldn't schedule me for 2 weeks. And so the doctor said, we can't wait 2 weeks. You need to go to the hospital to get this image. Because that's how, I guess, advanced they thought my cancer was in that situation. So when they found this tumor, and I'm going through the whole journey of thinking I have cancer, I'm going to die. This is how my life is going to look. I'm going to lose all my hair, just all the things during this process. And then they wanted to schedule the surgery pretty immediately. So they referred me at that point to a brain and spine surgeon to complete the surgery. And then in April 2022, so now I'm 24 months into this illness, I had a surgery to remove the tumor for biopsy, and the surgery was called a cervical laminectomy and tumor resection. So they had to cut some vertebrae in my neck, take it out, take out the tumor, and then put the vertebrae back with some titanium screws. And I thought I was going to set off metal detectors everywhere I went. Luckily, that is not the case, but that was a concern too. Just one more thing to worry about. So the only complication, luckily, with that surgery was that I'm allergic to the surgical wipes, but that was very, very minor compared to a week and a half of pancreatitis. So I'll take it. It's fine. Afterwards, I was in a neck brace, and they did keep me in the hospital for a few days just to make sure that everything went okay. But then I was in a neck brace on muscle relaxers and then starting physical therapy. It took a while to biopsy my tumor and figure out what it was. I think it was maybe the testing took that long, or it was sent to different places, facilities that had the capabilities to test for different things. So at this point, I've had the surgery, I'm home, but I still don't have answers in early April. So my physical therapy team starts working with me to regain my neck movement, because I do work on the computer a lot and I nod a lot as part of my job. And as you've probably noticed, I nod. So that is something, you know, I can't lose that from my neck surgery. So I'm in physical therapy, and they were very creative. I went to PT appointments maybe 2 or 3 times a week at first. And then when I went back to work and we started decreasing the appointments, they wanted me to, at first, go to the gym and do these exercises on my own. Well, I'm on all these immunosuppressants. COVID was still really bad in my area, all the infections and viruses in the gym. So what physical therapy figured out is that I could do kayaking, and that the motion of rowing targeted the same muscles. And that was pretty amazing. And my husband manages a river resort, so I do have access to kayaks and water. I can just go. So he would carry the kayak, put me in, I would kayak, sometimes in my little neck brace, and then get off the
That's
river.
perfect.
It
That's
was amazing.
perfect. You really are outdoorsy.
I am.
You guys are like perfect match too. So now you're like, you have access to all these amazing things. So that's really good. And rowing, you know what? I have been told that too. I've done physical therapy on and off for 15 years. And rowing is one that they always work with me. And that's because I have similar neck issues. I also have a tumor in my neck, but they don't take it seriously. So it's one of those where we're gonna let it get worse.
Gotcha.
but
Wait
you know,
till it pushes on your spinal cord.
Exactly, right? And so as long as the inflammations are down, honestly, it doesn't like make it act up so much, because when everything is inflamed, then everything's putting pressure on things. And so I start having, you know, syncope and, you know, all these different things. But physical therapy is still very important. I hope that people who find it hard to do things, you know, throughout their day, they can at least have a doctor refer them for physical therapy, because in the very least, it forces you to do something for 20 minutes in that day, and it does it without, you know, hurting your body in any way. So yeah, that's really good that you started doing that. I'm so sorry you had to have that surgery though. That's, you know, neck and back surgery. It's very scary. It's one of the most dangerous surgeries anyone can have, obviously. But I'm so glad that you got through it, and you can move.
Oh yeah, I can move my head all around now. Starting to get active again, and physical therapy really encouraged me to focus on the things I can do, because so much of being sick for me at that time was, I can't do this, I can't do this, I can't go there, I can't be here, I can't eat this, etc. And so they were focused on, what can you do? How do we make this happen? And so kayaking was happening. I started hiking because they wanted me to walk, and I get bored just walking outside. So hiking was like walking with scenery. And then they continued to work with me, and that went really well. So at this time, maybe 3 or 4 weeks into physical therapy, the biopsy results come back. And the results finally showed that it was IgG4. It was not a tumor at all. It was a fibro-inflammatory mass that was positive for IgG4. So still at this point, I don't have a diagnosis. Brain and spine says, talk to rheumatology. Oncology says, I don't need to see you anymore. It's not cancer, talk to rheumatology. But they were confident rheumatology would know what to do. And in May of 2022, I saw my rheumatologist. She was familiar with IgG4 and said that rituximab or Rituxan, I think one is the generic, one is the brand name, but it's the same thing, is the gold standard treatment for this disease. And the goal would be to start me on infusions and I would have 2 infusions every 6 months, and that would be my treatment plan. Now I have a diagnosis and a plan. But then my insurance denied it. There's always something. And this was before we had an ICD-10 code for IgG4 related disease. So hopefully that has made a difference for people that got diagnosed after that point. But at this time, there was no uniform code. And so my insurance said, Rituxan is experimental. We can't approve this. And my rheumatologist was fighting. I was fighting. At this point, I had been in the hospital so much over the last few years that my insurance assigned me a case manager. So I called that person and they were fighting. My rheumatologist did a peer-to-peer with my insurance company, and they sent a pediatrician to talk to her about IgG4 related disease, of course. And I'm 35 at this point. And so they send this pediatrician to talk to her. And the pediatrician had never heard of IgG4. So my rheumatologist is explaining, this is what it is. This is the medication. I am the expert. Please listen to me. If not, here are some experts that you can review their work that are also recommending this. So finally, the case manager and my rheumatologist, tons of phone calls, we get the approval. And so I get my first infusion of Rituxan. So my infusions finally got approved. In June 2022, I received my first round of infusions. After 3 or 4 months, I started to feel much better. I was able to attend one day of a music festival, but I broke my ankle stepping wrong off a curb in the dark. And the years of prednisone, it seems, had led to some bone thinning, which I learned from this incident. So at that point, now I'm in a cast/boot, depending on where we're at in the journey. And I began to taper more aggressively off prednisone to get off it completely, to not break any more bones, and added a calcium and vitamin D supplement to help with the bone thinning. I went back to PT twice a week for my broken ankle, which was a cuboid fracture, and that's also apparently very rare. They don't see that much. So one more rare thing. The effects of the first set of infusions wore off around month 5. And then in December 2022, I had my next round of infusions. After infusion 3, I felt better almost immediately, better than I had in years. And then in between the 3rd and 4th infusion, as I was finally getting out of the walking boot for my ankle, I got rear-ended coming home from work as I was turning onto my street by a potentially drunk driver. So we've talked about that in between time when you have one infusion and you have 2 weeks and you're waiting to get the next infusion. This was I call it my bubble, where I have to be really careful. So this incident led to having to go to the hospital, in an ambulance, in cold and flu and peak COVID season, when I'm supposed to be super careful. So I did what I could. I wore my mask, tried to be really careful at the hospital. But a big reason that I wanted to mention that is because getting in this car accident, I'm in the ambulance, they're trying to give me pain medication. My neck surgery is still healing at this point. And I did not feel like I could take anything that they were giving me, because I felt like when I get to the hospital, they're going to say, why did you have neck surgery? And I'm going to have to explain, this is what IgG4 disease is. And so that was a big eye opener. And I think this is probably where I got the idea that I need to start sharing my journey, that this needs to be out there. We need to be talking about this. Just because things like that happen, everyday life happens, and we interact with people who are not on our care team, and then realize that the awareness is not there. A lot of doctors say, oh, what's that? IgG4 related disease. I've never heard of that. And I heard that so much after the car accident when I was going to different specialists for different injuries. Just what is that? Luckily, I did not get sick from this whole incident. I was injured, but my injuries were not things that they said would get in the way if I got my infusion. So I was able to get my 4th infusion. The IgG4 symptoms started to clear. I started feeling really better, but I'm injured. So now I'm in physical therapy. And again, with the compromised immune system, being indoors, and the physical therapists also really don't have an understanding of IgG4 related disease. So they used RA protocol whenever I would have IgG4 symptoms. So if anybody has to go to physical therapy in the future, I don't think there's an IgG4-RD protocol, but there is RA, and that worked. So that part of my journey was really frustrating because not only was I dealing with the aftermath of this car accident and recovering, but I was having to explain my disease over and over and over again to different providers that I met. So at one point, I was so frustrated that I contacted the National Organization for Rare Disease, and they ended up giving me a scholarship to go to their summit, but then I couldn't attend because my kidney showed something on scans that looked really bad. And I thought, I'll be out of town and have kidney failure and I won't have support. That won't be good. But then tests later revealed my kidneys were fine. It was just one of those weird things that shows up on scans. So then by June 2023, my car accident injuries were mostly healed, and I received infusions 5 and 6, felt great afterwards, almost normal. Due to the clicking sound that my neck makes after the surgery and the car accident, I don't run anymore. But I was able to start consistently being active again last summer. And so I continued hiking to stay active and move my stiff joints and muscles, because at this point in my journey, movement helped keep my symptoms at bay. But I really want to point out here that before Rituxan, movement, everything made it worse. Walking, yoga, all of that did not help. It made it worse until the Rituxan, and now it helps. So it's all about, I think, timing and listening to your body.
And I second that too, because yes, walking, that's one of the things I say when I go back to my rheumatologist in my relapse state. I'm like, walking is hard again. I'm out of breath. The slightest slope I cannot go up without my legs locking up with pain. And stairs, forget about it. There's 2 steps I have to stop and be like, and it's like, it has nothing to do with me like being fat or like unhealthy. It's just what happens in my relapse.
Yeah.
I always say like going for Rituxan is like going for an oil change. So when I'm the car, and when my body starts, going clunk, clunk, clunk and starts slowing down, that's when I'm like, I need oil change. I need Rituxan. Go and get it. And then walking gets easy, breathing gets easy, talking gets easy. You still movements get easy again. So thank you for bringing that up. That's a very huge thing that a lot of people don't really necessarily talk about, the movement part, how difficult it gets just to move, just to get up and turn your head and take 3 steps forward. Like, yeah.
It's challenging, definitely. It's a struggle. And so a lot of times the idea is that if you move more, it gets easier. But maybe there's a balance in there, because a lot of times, I remember not even being able to walk. I had to hold onto the wall to go from the bed to the bathroom. And my husband referred to that time as me being bedridden. That's how much I really couldn't move by myself. I had to have people help me get dressed. I could not move. So hiking is my jam now, because it lets me move my body in a way that's usually safe, even when IgG4-RD flares up, and it helps me pay attention to my body and what it needs. It is also outdoors, which tends to be safer with a compromised immune system. I really enjoy doing difficult hikes that normal people would struggle with. For example, I recently hiked the Manitou Incline in Colorado, which has been ranked as the 2nd most physically demanding landmark internationally. And I was joking to myself, because I went by myself to do this. I was joking that they have this board of all the records people have set. And so there's no record for fastest person with IgG4 related disease. So however long it took me to get up there, I guess I hold the record because we're so rare. But my retirement plan is to hopefully retire young and keep as much mobility as possible. And I would like to hike the Appalachian Trail and post about it to raise awareness of IgG4. So that is a long-term goal. Hopefully the mobility stays. So where I'm at now in my journey is learning to do things that I want to do safely and how to work with the IgG4. So for example, getting a blister on a long hike and ignoring it is dangerous for anybody. That could lead to sepsis, but that's especially risky for us being on immunosuppressants such as rituximab, and we have to be so much more diligent. I'm learning to navigate things like altitude changes with lung nodules and whether it's safe to drink filtered water from a stream when you're on Rituxan, things like that. I'm hoping soon to go scuba diving in October, and that will be the first time I've gone since I got sick. So I'm really looking forward to that. And medically, where I'm at in my journey is that I haven't had an infusion since December 2022. And I don't know if I'm in remission because I still have symptoms here and there, but my symptoms are not severe anymore. And my disease is stable, meaning nothing is growing, and my IgG4 levels in my blood, because it does show up in my blood, are not rising dramatically. So what that looks like for me is just continuing to monitor. And then the plan is to get an infusion if anything changes where I'm not feeling so good.
Wow. Thank you, Lindsey. Thank you for sharing your wild journey with us. I'm really happy that you are, let's say, in remission, or at least stable. Having that mobility and just that sense of normalcy that we feel. Being in that state is always good, and I hope that you can stay on that for as long as possible. With the whole remission thing, that's still a bit tricky for all of us. The one thing that a lot of doctors are now discussing is maintenance therapy, which is just doing a single dose for 1,000 milligram unit for every 6 months. You just do one dose until full remission. That part of it is still a bit, questionable to me. I'm like, well, how long do we keep up the maintenance therapy, But I guess it would be until all of your symptoms sort of go down, which is really hard with this disease for us because it's hard to ever fully have it be okay. A lot of times we tend to put up with 2 or 3 symptoms. As long as the other 20 symptoms are down, we're like, the other 3 or 4, even at that mild level, we'll keep that, it's kind of like pick and choose your battles. We do it with our symptoms. And so I hope that you stay in this good state for a very long time. We need you around, and your story is very inspiring. It's very relatable. It's very validating, not just for me, I'm sure for a lot of other patients listening. And, being on the younger side of this, going through it and then going through all of this as a woman, you get the difficulties that we've had to face throughout it. And for everyone listening, Lindsey is a seropositive patient, so she has the antibodies for IgG4 in her blood, which makes it a tiny bit easier to track. It doesn't mean that it's super easy to track still, but because new things can pop up, we still need to get, radiological scans and physical exams and the upkeep. And thank you for talking about the importance of Rituxan and that bubble that we have to, be careful, be wary of, because picking up an infection right after we get infusions is really scary. It could be fatal, and we do have a small percentage of our mortality rates does fall into that category of picking up an infection after infusion. So, at the end of the day, my doctor always says it's a cancer treatment. It is a cancer treatment, right? It's for lymphoma, non-Hodgkin's lymphoma. And it doesn't have radiation, but what do people who go through chemotherapy usually do? They stay away from crowds, they mask up, they hydrate, they vitamin up, they cut certain foods out of their life, and they make sure they don't pick up an infection until they do better. So it's not like, yes, there's an infusion, let's go get it, we'll feel better right after. It still comes with a set of, hey, be careful, you want to make sure your immune system is still strong enough. You're not, allowing people who are feeling some type of, illness or sick to come around you. You want to avoid these situations. It's temporary, because then you start feeling better. And so thank you for talking about that bubble. It's very important.
Yes, it is. Thank you.
I know. This has been wonderful talking with you about all of this. Is there anything you feel like we might have missed that you want to mention? You think we covered everything?
I think so.
It's never enough time. We could talk for days if we were allowed to sit here and just talk. But if you could give a message to our viewers, for our patients, for our caregivers, and for our medical professionals, just a sweet, short message, what would it be?
All right, so starting with doctors, IgG4 related disease is rare and the awareness is still catching up. So it's okay if you haven't heard of it, but please, please, please step out into the hallway before you look it up. Make up an excuse. Say you have to grab something from the printer. Say you have a consult. Step out of the room before you look it up. And if you're willing to look it up, that's amazing. And thank you for that, because we need more doctors willing to learn. Just don't learn in front of us, please. For caregivers, friends, family, loved ones, we've talked about this some, but getting regular sick, flu, viruses, stomach bugs, all of that is really hard for us on these meds. We are more susceptible, and what I've noticed personally for me is when I catch something, it tends to last 2 or 3 times as long for me as it does for other people. So to friends, family, loved ones, let us know if you're sick, if you've been around someone who's sick, so that we can make informed decisions. And then understand too that this disease is really fluid and unpredictable. So what we're able to do on some days may not be what we can do on other days. And we always don't know what kind of day it's going to be for us. A lot of times we don't know that. For patients, I think I have more advice for patients than for anyone. Listen to your body and track your symptoms if you're still in the process of getting a diagnosis. You know your body, you know when something isn't right. And just because it looks okay on the tests, maybe it's the wrong test. So tracking symptoms can be a really objective way to present that information to doctors at appointments, keeping it focused just on the facts, trying to be calm and as objective as possible in appointments. Bring notes to your appointments, take notes. Also, medical burnout is real. Ask for help, and it's okay to take a break, but don't give up. So one more piece of advice for patients would be to connect with your community. This is so important, and it is so, so healing, because being rare is not like when you have a more common disease and you can just meet people everywhere that have this disease and deal with it. Having IgG4 can be isolating, but there are lots of good places to connect with other patients and hear their stories, such as the Living with IgG4 Related Diseases support group on Facebook, this podcast, IgG4-RD Life, IgG Forward, and IgG4-RD Connect. So just to name a few, those can be great places to connect with other patients. And then finally, find a way to keep doing the things that are still important to you and the things that make you happy with IgG4. Because a lot of activities and situations can be modified to accommodate this disease if you think outside the box. And there is life after an IgG4 related disease diagnosis.
Thank you, Lindsey. That was so sweet. I love that. There definitely is life after this disease, and I mean, look at all these outdoorsy adventures that you're doing, and all of us that come on here and we speak, we should all be examples of that. There is life after disease. There is life with this disease, but after diagnosis, there's life with this disease.
Yes.
And I love hearing all these amazing success stories. So thank you. Your message for patients is exactly what I always say at the end of every session. So I won't say the same message anymore. And for doctors, just listen to us, patients speak up, and caregivers, we love you. Thank you. Because I'm a little bit hard on my caregivers a little bit. I'm like, listen to me. Let me tell you how to love me. Let me tell you how to take care of me. You know, but we love you guys, and you know, this is great. People won't be able to tell, but Lindsey and I have been talking for over 3.5 hours at this moment, and so you know, when she said find the community and start talking, because this is why we were talking for this long. It's because that sense of community, there's just something about it. You know, you find your new friends and new family kind of through these relationships, and through joining these types of support groups and talking with us. For our Europe patients, there's ERN Connect, for you to reach out to, ERN Reconnect. And they have multiple communities for different rare diseases. And Australia has its own separate patient groups for IgG4 as well on Facebook. They are exclusive to Australia. And Lindsey named the rest. And we'll keep sharing those as links in the comments below. And thank you. Thank you, Lindsey. I'm so happy we got to do this today. This has been so wonderful.
Thank you for having me. It's been great talking with you.
Absolutely. I look forward to having you with us again on the podcast, but also to just working with you in the future and all the different things that we're doing for our rare disease community. So thank you. Everybody, sorry, don't forget, follow, like, subscribe, and we'll keep you updated with the latest everything IgG4. Thank you.